County LAFCO Commission meeting. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Adams. Here. Commissioner Roots Askew.
Here.
Commissioner Church.
Here.
Commissioner Kong.
Here.
Commissioner Leffel.
Here.
Commissioner Oglesby.
Here.
Commissioner Velasquez.
Here.
Vice Chair Craig.
Here.
And Chair Gorley.
Here.
Commissioner Poitras is absent due to a medical reason today. He's got an excused absence.
Great. Thank you. Waitress.
Poitras.
Family medical reasons.
Right, but that has to be on the record. That's all.
He's absent.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
We have to acknowledge that on the
Yeah.
record.
Okay, thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. General public comments. Anyone may address the commission briefly about items not already on the agenda. Anyone from the public? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Chair Gorley, no members on Zoom have their hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Move on to special business. We have a resolution of appreciation for Commissioner Steve Snodgrass for his distinguished service as a public member commissioner. And we have a proclamation. And it's got a whole lot of whereases to it. But it was a pleasure serving with Steve on this commission since 2011. And so we really appreciate his service on this commission. And Steve, I understand you're on Zoom. Did you have some comments?
Just briefly, Matt, I've enjoyed getting to know various members of the commission, especially yourself. And I think LAFCO has a very important role in the community. And it's interesting that when I first heard of LAFCO, I thought it was a bad comedy club in Los Angeles. But it's as I've learned what LAFCO really does and the charter that LAFCO has, I really think that you folks should be commended for the amount of effort you put into this. And it's certainly a unsung heroes of LAFCO, as many of the people in the county have no idea what you folks do. Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to serve with you folks for 12 years.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody have any comments from the commission? Mayor Craig?
Just an acknowledgement, Steve, I appreciate everything that you have given to North County over the many years that you served there, and we wish you well in retirement in Colorado. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Any other comments? Yes.
Yeah, Steve, sorry to see you leaving North County. It's kind of our loss, your gain of Colorado, but it's been good to know you and work with you over the time, and hope you enjoy things with your grandkids.
Thank you, Commissioner Church. Anyone else? Commissioner Oglesby?
I just want to say I appreciate serving alongside of him for the handful of years I've been here, and it definitely is a loss. You were a steady hand, and you were good for LAFCO, and we appreciate you. And now that I know where you're going to be with your family and your grandkids. I wish you well. Thank you so much for your service.
Seeing no one else?
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Velasquez.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo the same sentiment, wish you well. And it's always nice to know that your move is related to family, especially grandkids, which are very precious. So wishing you well and thank you for your public service.
Do we need to open it up for public comment? Anyone from the public? Anybody on Zoom?
No hands raised on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, we'll bring it back. We have a motion on the floor from Commissioner Craig.
Yep, I'll say that on record. So
Been
moved.
Seconded by Commissioner Laffel. And I don't think we need a roll call vote. I think we have a consensus of our group. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed being none, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you once again, Steve.
Thank you all, Matt. Bye-bye.
Okay. We'll now open up our consent agenda. Anybody have any items that they want to pull off the consent? Commissioner LAFCO.
Yes, I'd like to pull item 5, please.
Anyone else have any questions on our consent?
I'll move approval of the remaining items.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded, consent items except for item number 5. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Being none, motion carries. Okay, item number 5 on the consent agenda. Go ahead, Commissioner LAFCO.
I just had a question for staff on item 3 on the item 5, which is the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. And I said it says coming months, and that's been a while. Do we have any kind of an idea on the closure?
Yes, Commissioner Leffel, that is our understanding that the county has finished the audit that's been complete for a while. What remains is the transfer of remaining funds. So as was reported, the last lawsuit has been settled. So it's the remaining funds, and I believe that an update will be coming in the next few months to the County Board of Supervisors, and a status on the transfer of those funds to the underlying agencies for the Fort Ord Reuse Authority will be reported on.
Mary Ann, did you have
Yeah,
anything?
no, that was it. That's just dragging and dragging. So coming months could be anything. I just wanted to know kind of where we are. I keep hearing in other places that 4 is gone. I'm like, well, it's not totally gone. So, it needs to get cleaned up.
Okay, great. Do we have a motion to approve consent agenda item number 5?
I would move that.
It's been moved by Lifel, second by Velasquez. Hang on a minute. Can Commissioner Velasquez vote on the alternate on the consent?
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
I'll second. How about that?
Okay.
Forgot where you were for a minute.
Commissioner Askew, thank you. Sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, being none, motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Continued business, continued from the June 26, 2023 regular commission meeting, review of LAFCO's policies and practices for ag preservation and mitigation. Kate.
Right. Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. Today, the commission is continuing its discussion about LAFCO's ag mitigation requirements for city annexations of prime farmland. The overall purpose of ag mitigation is to protect Monterey County's valuable agricultural resources and to preserve the viability of our local agricultural industry. That industry is our largest economic engine and a major food producer for our nation and the world. Innovation, soils, climate, and infrastructure are all keys to this viability, along with the availability of water and the availability of land to farm. And in keeping with land being available for farming production, that is a core responsibility of LAFCO. LAFCO has decision-making authority to require ag mitigation for city annexations. Having ag mitigation be part of the annexation process is rooted in LAFCO's legislative mandate to balance the protection of prime farmlands with the needs for orderly growth and development of cities. Our commission has done a good job of achieving that balance. Through policy and actions, Monterey LAFCO has worked and continues to work in cooperation with the cities and County of Monterey to provide for growth and development of communities in meeting housing needs, the needs for employment and economic development, the needs for delivery of efficient government services, and other needs of residents throughout Monterey County. What is the Commission's record of accomplishment? Since 2000, LAFCO has approved annexations of approximately 5,000 acres or 7.8 square miles to the Salinas Valley cities. About 80 to 85% of that annexed land remains undeveloped to date. Nearly half of that is in the city of Salinas, and the rest is in the urban land inventories of the other 4 cities of the Salinas Valley. LAFCO has also, during that time, added an additional approximately 3,800 acres of land to the spheres of influence of the Salinas Valley cities between 2008 and 2022. Almost all of that 3,500 or 3,800 acres remains undeveloped to date. This shows an intention on the part of LAFCO to annex thousands of acres of farmland to cities when that land is needed in the future for urban purposes. In taking these actions to approve city annexations and spheres of influence, LAFCO has also accomplished over 2,000 acres of permanent agricultural land protection as mitigation. This record demonstrates that LAFCO of Monterey County has balanced the important and competing public needs for city growth and farmland preservation over the last 20 plus years. Just what is the Commission's preservation policy and what are the practices that are followed for mitigation? LAFCO's first ag preservation policy was adopted in 1979 and updated in 2010 after public meetings. The adopted policy provides for high-level guidance in establishing that agricultural land preservation is an important local priority and that preservation should go hand in hand with city annexations. This policy does not provide specific details on the details of how to carry out ag mitigation because it was meant by the Commission to allow for flexibility. The flexible aspect of LAFCO's policy was a deliberate feature, and it worked well for a number of years. LAFCO's practices for implementing ag mitigation requirements have generally been consistent for city annexations for the last 10 or 15 years. The main elements of those practices, as outlined in the staff report, are as follows. First, with respect to timing, ag mitigation is identified and implemented at the time of annexation as part of the LAFCO process and as approved by the Commission. Second, the Commission generally has allowed no exemptions or exceptions to ag mitigation. These would be impractical at the annexation stage generally, where there is uncertainty about the final types and configurations of future land uses, and land use plans can and do change after annexations take place. However, the flexibility of the current policy does allow the Commission to grant exceptions on a case-by-case basis when there is a high certainty about land uses, such as might be possible through deed restrictions for affordable housing units and sites. A third aspect of the Commission's practice has to do with what amount of mitigation is feasible, usually referred to as the mitigation ratio. How much ag land should be preserved as mitigation for the annexation of those lands to a city. LAFCO's practice has been a range of 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 generally, depending on various factors, with an overall average of 1.5 acres preserved for every 1 acre annexed to a city. So where are we now? Where are we going with this LAFCO policy and practices? Recently, there has been a surge in public interest in LAFCO's ag preservation policy and mitigation practices. This is understandably driven by critical pressures in state mandates for housing, by important economic development needs, and by high development costs that are barriers to development. Part of the drive is also for additional consistency and certainty in the LAFCO process. For these and other reasons, our LAFCO is undertaking the current review of LAFCO's policy and practices. The outcome may result in some changes to the policy and practices. The changes may range from minor clarifications to wholesale changes in LAFCO's responsibilities and potentially an undermining or very broad support for the basic authority granted under state law. We hear clearly that cities, property owners, and developers want a clear and consistent set of specific requirements and criteria for ag mitigation. Going forward, we strongly encourage that those standards be developed at the grassroots level of the Salinas Valley cities and the county, working together to reach consensus on the main points of how ag mitigation should occur in Monterey County. LAFCO would then be in a position to review and review those that consistent approach and adopt and align its policies and practices to align with such a city-county agreement. There is no such agreement in place at this moment. The county is actively developing an ordinance that will apply to projects taking place in the unincorporated areas of Monterey County. This effort was originally intended 10 years ago to be a truly county-wide program with buy-in from the Salinas Valley cities. But it has proven very difficult to reach agreement on some of the main provisions, such as mitigation ratios. Therefore, a broad-based cities-county consensus has not come together to date. It may ultimately turn out that the cities would like ag mitigation to be done differently in some ways from where the county's ordinance ends up sometime next year. It is promising that the August 21st city organized meeting that I reference in our staff report, that LAFCO was invited to it and we attended, and it also included county representatives. It was a very constructive dialogue, and we appreciated that invitation to be there and join in. Another meeting of this group is scheduled for late September. LAFCO, in my opinion, should allow time for those discussions to continue and for the county's ordinance to take place at the same time, and see if a broad city-county agreement may still be reachable. Even if that aspiration is not realized, we at LAFCO anticipate that new ideas, innovative approaches, or other input may come forward from those city-county LAFCO discussions that would benefit LAFCO's consideration of proposed policy changes. As an alternative, of course, the Commission does have discretion to direct changes to LAFCO's policies or practices now. Staff is recommending that it would be premature to make such changes now, while not even the cities and county have agreed upon long-term approaches to ag mitigation. If the county does want, or if the Commission does want to provide direction to staff for changes now, then some ideas are listed in the staff report for consideration, such as clarifying by policy the actual consistent practices followed now by LAFCO with respect to ag mitigation timing, exemptions, and ratios. I'd also like to take a moment and talk about something we've been hearing quite a bit about, and it's the question of, is ag mitigation a barrier to development? For the record, staff would like to address that concern. The concern is that LAFCO's ag mitigation is an undue barrier to the cost of development. Ag mitigation at the time of city annexations is not free. It does have costs associated with it. However, those costs need to be looked at in the overall context of development. Our understanding is that purchasing a conservation easement on Salinas Valley prime farmland is currently in the range of $15,000 to $20,000 per acre. This is on the order of $2,000 per unit for typical single-family housing development if mitigation occurs at a 1-to-1 ratio. This mitigation cost of approximately $2,000 per housing unit needs to be viewed in the context of city impact fees. For example, the City of Soledad's impact fees are approximately $26,000 per unit, and the City of Gonzales impact fees are about $45,000 per unit. On top of these city impact fees come such fees or impact fees as those imposed by the Regional Transportation Agency for Monterey County that has a regional traffic impact fees of about $3,000 per unit. Add to this the need for school district impact fees, plan check fees, and other fees that easily drive the total permitting costs well above $50,000 for a single family unit in the Salinas Valley. In this light, the typical cost of ag mitigation in the LAFCO process is likely to be less than 5% of the total permitting cost for development, and is well under 1% of the total cost of building and selling a home in the Salinas Valley. This cost, when imposed by authority of this LAFCO, is a reasonable cost of mitigating for the loss of irreplaceable agricultural lands in the Salinas Valley. LAFCO's ag mitigation is an investment in maintaining the viability of our regional agricultural economy and is not, in our opinion, a barrier to the feasibility of development in any significant way. So with that, and in closing, staff recommends today that the commission receive public input on these policy matters, discuss the information in the report, and continue this item for approximately 90 days to the commission's December 4th meeting. The purpose of the continuance is to allow and encourage the Salinas Valley cities and the County of Monterey to continue to collaborate on developing a clear and consistent approach to implementing ag land mitigation. So that completes our staff report. We're happy to answer any questions.
I think I'll take some questions from the commission, but I need to open it up to public before we get into a really good dialogue on this. Any questions from the commission first? Okay. Okay. We'll go ahead and open this public forum up for discussion. Anyone from the public at this time? The Honorable Mayor of King City, welcome.
Thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity. I want to first say is very pleased to hear that you're looking to wait until the counties and cities have chance to have those conversations, because I think that was one of the things I was going to ask for.
Great.
I do want to suggest, though, on a couple items, So on the board report for practices, you have timing, exceptions, and mitigation. Under mitigation, I would suggest whatever you end up deciding eventually is it should never be more than 1-to-1. It is an impediment when it comes to large developments because it is a big chunk of money that has to be put down regardless of the per unit. Timing should always be flexible on the mitigation impact. Some projects are brought in on a phased timeline, and mitigation should be flexible enough to allow for those phases as well. Under the portion that says pages for policies and procedures, you had items 1, 2, 3, and 4, which in general, they look very good. They do demonstrate that the policies are more of a check and a balance approach. But I did have some concerns on each one of those items. There'll be a portion of it that will state, like for item number 1, proposals that fail to discuss this balance in the opinion of the executive officer will be deemed incomplete. I personally believe that should be in the opinion of the commissioners. I believe that the elected bodies, those appointed, should be the ultimate decision makers. And when these things are brought before you, it also gives the public an opportunity to discuss it. So I would encourage you, when you look at how you change your policies, that maybe those lines in those 4 items be changed to reflect that. I'm glad you're going to take more time. I do want to remind everybody in the Salinas Valley, it is hard to get developers because we do have lower cost of housing, which means a smaller profit margin for those developers. So every dollar added actually eats into that profit margin. It is also a community that is farm workers, low income, and primarily Hispanic. This is also all of our communities are under the Justice 40 map. So there are times when I get concerned when policies, no matter how well-intentioned, end up disproportionately affecting those who cannot represent themselves as well, those that are in lower incomes, and be most affected by the policy decisions. And lastly, again, thank you. I do hope that the December 4th isn't a drop dead for a decision, that if the cities and counties need more time to work through these processes to get it right, it is absolutely most important we get it right, because I do believe in preserving farmland. I think it is absolutely crucial, and to do it in a balanced way that reflects the needs of the communities, reflects the needs of this commission and of the county, will benefit all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, point of order.
Sure.
I thought I heard a public statement say that we decided to kick this thing down the curb. I don't think we decided that yet.
No, we haven't.
I'm just, it kept being stated as though that was already decided. So
Right. So if we want an action from the committee or from the commission during discussion, we need to tell our executive director what path we want and get it back before the next meeting.
Yeah, I just don't want the public confused about we already made a decision.
No.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you, commissioners. My name is Paul Wood. I'm the city manager for the city of Greenfield. And this is a big issue. I mean, I know Mr. Kong is from Greenfield. This is a big deal for us because it directly affects the amount of development going on. And while it is wonderful that that we are having these meetings, we just started having these meetings. This has been an issue that's gone on a long time. And the cities and county and LAFCO just started sitting down. I think earlier this year is when we first started talking about it. And I believe what you're going to hear moving forward is the fact that there is ag mitigation. I think everybody agrees with that, but it should not be an onerous amount. 1-to-1 looks like what historically things have been at, and it's what seems to be appropriate when it comes to finding mitigating properties. Also, the timing. If you look at the city of Soledad and their Miramonte project, trying to find enough land and having to fund that mitigation is a big leap. So I just want to say the Greenfield is really interested in continuing the talks that we've got, and as well as the other South County cities and Salinas as well. And also to emphasize that this board, this commission is really important in moving this forward. If it takes policy changes, I think that's really important, because I think this board is in charge of a lot of what's going to go on here. And while Ms. McKenna's done a wonderful job in the last number of years, I'll just say that, in getting this right, we need to make sure that the board is the one that's making the decisions and is driving how everything gets mitigated and developed. Thank you very much.
Megan Hunter. I'm the city manager for the city of Soledad. And I just wanted to echo my colleagues. First of all, I wanted to thank Kate and Darren. We had a great meeting with the Salinas Valley cities along with the county, but it came obvious to me during that meeting that we need more time to put into place something that makes sense for our area. And I do appreciate that LAFCO wants the county to see if we can work it out with the county on what that policy would be. We did do some research contacting other LAFCOs, and what we found was actually generally that was the approach that they also took, that they deferred to. In some cases, the county did have some type of formal ag mitigation requirement. I should note that every county LAFCO that we contacted said that the mitigation ratio was 1-to-1. We focused on counties that were similarly ag focused, and we're going to complete that research and we're happy to share it. But I think it would be smart for this commission to defer to the work with the county. And likewise, we support a 1-to-1 ratio. I do want to state that timing is also problematic, and flexibility on timing is important, especially when you think about small developers. We looked at the impact fees, but those impact fees often come later in the process at building permit or sometimes certificate of occupancy in the case of Salinas. But if that is payment up front for a small developer talking about, 100 acres, that's going to be very challenging to do. So you end up with KB Homes, DL Horton, and instead of getting some of our local developers. So I think some flexibility on timing should be considered so that we can have a different type of pool of developers in our jurisdiction. But again, I really appreciate the staff at LAFCO for coming to that conclusion, because we agree that this should be postponed and it's too premature to make any decisions until those discussions can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Anyone else from the public? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Moncrief. The number per acre for mitigation was thrown out at 15,000 to 20,000 an acre. I'm wondering where that number comes from and whether it's the board's understanding that a landowner and a developer are free to make whatever deal they might see fit.
Right. And that was probably something that we had done in the past. But the calculation, as far as it was a farmland, taking that development right away from that farmland, I think that calculation is something this board still has to get through. So moving forward, do I understand that right, Kate?
Well, with each transaction, each mitigation proposal being prepared, generally, as you know, there are valuations done. And so this is based on information from the Agricultural Land Trust for Monterey County.
Okay. And what about if the landowner says, I'll take less or I want more?
Well, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
So part of the negotiation, but
Right.
I sat with Gonzalez, of course, with their ag mitigation committee, and it was 4 to 5 years on that committee. And we were down in the numbers of $45,000 to $5,000 an acre ag waiver fee. And coming back and seeing what these numbers are, I mean, it's what we're going to have to include in our policy, and what do we use for an adjustment on how that number creeps up with land prices.
No, exactly.
We're just going to have to get into the science of it and the weeds and figure out where we're at.
Well, it's been my experience that it's always been a percentage, not a set number, depending on what the land is worth.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Lisa Brinton, Community Development Director for the City of Salinas. I just want to echo the previous statements in support of deferring the conversation and allowing cities and the county the opportunity to continue the discussions that have recently begun. It was a first and very productive meeting to have Salinas Valley cities, LAFCO, county staff, and the Ag Commissioner and Ag Commission staff in the room. So many times we come in at the end run, and everyone at the end, when we're at the point of project approval, mitigation, monitoring report, provide their feedback. And so I think it's very important that we are having these conversations now to all come to agreement, a consensus on what the criteria is for all the factors that we have identified in terms of mitigation ratio, timing, opportunity for exemption, as well as location. I think that's also important, and how mitigation is accomplished. So I think those are the key areas that warrant additional discussion, and we support allowing that process to happen. And the City of Salinas is committed to participating in that monthly process that we've agreed to, and look forward to coming back, at least with an update in December. And I appreciate the comment that we need to get this right. We need to work together to get this right. And so if more time's needed, we can give an update in December and seek direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Commission. Tavin Kinnison-Brown, Community Development Director, City of Gonzales. As we go through the city processes, at least in my community here, where we've been preparing for urban expansion for many years, 15 years, and we're preparing specific plans, environmental documents, planning for infrastructure, for sewers to flush and water to flow. What's going to come out of our city are, specific plans, development agreements, vesting tentative maps, and conditions of approval that address these phasing. And then to hear on top of that why would we have an additional condition of land use approval of paying all your agricultural mitigation up front? It's a new land use control that may not be included in our specific plans, development agreements. These are documents and agreements of how we're going to interact and how development can be expected. And so the additional potential of pay all your mitigation right now scares away our developers, and we don't get anything, especially over these developments that are going to phase out over, two decades or more. So it's just a little pitch.
Thank you, Tavern. Anyone else from the public?
Good afternoon, commissioners, staff. Chris Steinbruner, I'm a local landowner, business owner, and resident. Live in the city of Salinas. Reiterate some points I heard today. I'll make it brief. There's been a lot of talk about the ratios, but I think the exemptions and the timing, also the in lieu fees are also very, very important, because it's getting harder and harder to actually find ground that you can build a conservation easement on, because certain landowners, certain farmers just aren't going to do it at any price. And particularly when and the other issue is urban boundaries. I don't know if that's in your policies. You've discussed urban boundaries. Is it a moral prerogative to put a boundary around the community and say you're never going to grow this direction? There's the Salinas County MOU that does that on the south side and the west side of Salinas, which I think is great, because that's, you might call the super prime land on that side. But then that means that everybody's agreed that Salinas will grow north and east. So we need to acknowledge that. And in terms of the cost, yeah, and everything that adds to the developer's cost can hinder development. I think we all remember 2008, 2009, number of developers that went bankrupt around the country and here locally. And it's not free money. It's not, developer comes into town, they're guaranteed to do super well. Also in terms of exemptions, familiar with property that has school right there, been surrounded by residences for decades, no fault of the landowner. And should it be the same issue, or are we steering development, or are we stopping development? I think personally, as a member of the public, the policy should be steering development to the places we as a community would want it versus other areas. So in short, I would just ask the commission to think about the state housing guidelines and be sure policy really matches those guidelines from the state, because we really do need that infrastructure and housing for our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else from the public this afternoon? Do we have anybody on Zoom?
Chair Gorley, we have one hand raised by Melanie Breddy.
Hi, thank you. Melanie Beretti with the County of Monterey. I just wanted to, first of all, really thank LAFCO staff and the commission for bringing this topic forward. As indicated, the county has been working for over 1.5 years on developing our ordinance for how to address farmland mitigation for unincorporated lands. And during that time, we have also been reaching out and attempting to coordinate with the Salinas Valley cities to ensure that we are engaging in a productive countywide or valley-wide discussion about ag land protection and mitigation that's balanced with the needs for urban growth. So I just want to, thank the LAFCO for this topic, thank the cities for coming together. I think this most recent meeting that we just held was the first one where we had the right players in the room and really focused and committed to having a conversation about what a consistent countywide program might look like and how we can creatively approach being highly protective of our industry and our ag land for the future while allowing for that needed urban development and growth. So with that, I just want to encourage this commission to consider allowing those discussions to continue and letting us come back in a couple of months and report back. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom, Jonathan?
Chair, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, no one else from the public this afternoon. We'll bring it back to commission discussion. Honorable Mayor of Salinas, go ahead.
Thank you. So I really appreciate the robust discussion, and thank you to wide representation of the Salinas Valley being present today. I recognize some of you traveled upwards of 45 minutes to be here today, so very much appreciate your presence. Couple things I just want to acknowledge. I think the cities are in agreement over the 1-for-1 ratio. I do know that there's quite a bit of discussion about flexibility of timing and the percentage of land valuation, deferring fees. And I'm inclined to allow the cities to continue the discussions with the county. My one concern, though, is that LAFCO currently has very antiquated policies in place. And I want to just acknowledge that even in the meeting on August 21st, the policies of LAFCO were presented as such. These are the 2-for-1, no exemptions. There's a lot of discussion there that I think this board needs to absolutely address. It may come after there is robust discussion and consensus between the cities and the county, but I do think we need to change our policies. There's a lot of discussion about the precedent has always been this, but I would say, we as policymakers, particularly in this state, change policies that need to be changed because it's the right thing to do. We have housing mandates. We have a desperate need for housing in our community. And I think, when you have even a couple of growers in the audience that understand that need, I'm inclined to make the recommendation that it comes back to LAFCO after the county and the cities come to consensus for a change of policy. I do have some concern about the timing. I know Ms. McKenna mentioned the December meeting, although in that meeting on August 21st with everyone present, it's my understanding that it goes in front of the Board of Supervisors in winter of 2024. So January of 2024. So that's cutting it very close timing wise. I also recognize we're at the midnight hour too. And as Melanie mentioned, she's been working on it for a year and a half, and better late than never. But I do think it's important for us to look at getting those meetings going between the cities and the county, and also bringing it forward for LAFCO. I want to make sure that we're not bumping up against when the Board of Supervisors actually make a decision on the ag mitigation plan. And if it's January of 2024, that is T-minus 4 months away. So those are all my comments for now. Thank you.
Ian?
Yeah, I just got initial thoughts. I'm really trying to understand where we're at and what we're doing, because I'm hearing a lot of talk about, and I appreciate the conversation between the county and the cities, but I hear a lot of talk about waiting for them to complete their conversations. And I'm saying to myself, as an independent body, what am I waiting for? If what am I waiting for someone else to tell me a decision that they say I can make on my own as a commission? Right. And so I think we need to start our own thoughts and plans about our decision making. I guess the numbers can come in there a little bit later, but how do we start the conversation here at this level to be prepared to meet a timeline of January or March or February, whenever you guys want to make your final decision? But sitting here waiting for a MOU between the counties and the cities, and then what do we do with that number? What do we do with that? Do we just copy that policy? That's what I'm trying to understand. And then I understand there's 3 or 4 other things we need to look at. It's timing. And I heard someone talk about the possibility of, when these fees are due, let alone what the fees could be, right? When do we think about that? In December? And so I think it's a lot more work to be done prior to we look at the MOU and see if that's something we want to adopt. And I understand we want to be in alignment, but then we say in alignment, what does that mean? Cut and paste, which may be okay. But for the commission, when are we going to start our deliberations about what we think we want to vote on and what we support? And that's kind of like my thoughts of, why am I waiting for another body that's independent from me to tell me what I should be adopting? And then my last comment is, I know we're sending our executive director and our team to these meetings that all of a sudden just started. They've been working on it for a while, but now we're hearing about how robust and how everybody's at the table. And I think we just brought this up a couple months ago. And so I don't know how long that party is going to last if it just started anew now. But what is our executive director or LAFCO, what are we saying at that table? What policies are we saying at that table if we're waiting for December for them to come back at us? What do we send out? And I guess at them, we adopt the MOU or they adopt the MOU, and then we say, hey, our policy is 180 degrees different. So I think we need to give our, for lack of a better word, our consultants, our executive director and our staff more insight into what we're looking at, because why would we send them out there to negotiate and to talk and press forward on these type of policies? And then we come back and we say that that's not in alignment with what we've been thinking. Because I think we all have thoughts, and we're definitely all going to have more thoughts before December. So waiting till December is a long time to have those important conversations. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Adams, did you have anything? Okay. Mayor?
Supervisor Wendy.
Okay, Wendy, go ahead.
No, thank you. Well, I'll start by saying I really appreciate your summary of sort of where we're at and where the opportunity for updates to policy may exist. So thank you for that, Kate. And I took notes as we were listening to public comment just now, and what I heard is that there is a need to take a look at our policies, specifically in the 3 areas that have been called out. But I also hear that there is a and we hear this across the board, that if you're a developer, you need some predictability and some clarity so that you can crunch numbers and, pencil out a plan, have a proposal that's going to make sense and is going to work. In order to get to that predictability, we need to have some clarity. And in order to get to clarity, there's a commitment, I hear a shared commitment to build some consensus around what might make sense for everybody involved, the county, the cities, LAFCO. So I'm inclined to say that if we can have consensus, that leads us to some predictable, clear guidelines so that our developers know what they're working with and can figure out how to move forward. So just restating what I've heard to that point. And I do think that, it sounds like the county has been sort of working on this ag mitigation program for some time, but now we've got everyone at the table. And I hear a shared commitment from everyone to come up with some, to get something in writing, to get something agreed upon. So I'm inclined to say we should allow for that conversation to happen. And as much as I agree with my colleague Mayor Oglesby that we make decisions here, to get to the clarity that's being desired, having that consensus is so much better for everyone, and prevents us from saying, okay, we're clear about what we want, you're clear about what you want, it's not totally aligned with each other, and now we have a lack of clarity for anyone who wants to do business with us. So I think that we need to continue the conversation with good faith from everyone involved, that we're going to figure out how to build something that is predictable for our developers. The other thing that I think would be helpful in all of this, as we talk about the housing piece, there are a number of policies changing at the state level, and to make sure that that the LAFCO, the essential role of LAFCO in balancing agricultural protections with the need for orderly community growth and development. I think that we need to figure out how to, if we were going to have a conversation, it'd be how do we balance that? How do we ensure that we have orderly development and agricultural protection while also recognizing that there is a need for clarity and consistency, and that leads to housing that we need. So if we were going to have a conversation, that's where I think it would be maybe understanding what some of those state level tensions that exist are. But I'm inclined to say, let's continue talking about it, figure it out, and then bring us back what you've got, and then we go on from there.
Commissioner Leffel.
Yes, thank you. So a couple things. I think what I heard was that this body looked at policy in 1979 and again in 2000, 21 years apart. So a lot of things have changed in the last 20 some years since 2010, 13 years. A lot of things have changed. So it seems to me we are an independent body. We do not march in step with the county. This board is separate from the county, even though we have 3 of its members seated here. So if we are to be an independent body, I believe we need to work concurrently, but that I agree completely with the Mayor Salinas and the Mayor Seaside that we've got policy we've got to look at and that we've got to change. We have seen now documents that are out into the public view that say LAFCO's policy is, and we have never talked about that. That is not our policy. We have said that we don't know what that is. We don't have any idea what's being out there. So I agree with Supervisor Askew. We can't send someone out to be speaking on our behalf if they don't even know what our behalf is. So I think we need to take a look at ourselves. And are we just here to be nice once a month and then go back home? Or are we going to dig into it and take a look at it? What makes sense for our community at this time and with the things that we need for our community. So what I heard, I thought, was that this has been ongoing for about 10 years, that the county and the cities have been trying to work on their MOU. They haven't gotten it. 10 years is a long time. Everyone talks about the price of land. No one talks about the price of time. the price of time is so important to a developer. They need the land, but they need to have the assurance that when they start in and they put forth $1 million or $2 million or $3 million, that they're going to be able to recoup some of that. And in my former life and with things that I'm involved in now, what I see is that we just string them along in this county, string them along. And then we wake up and we go, wow, how did that other county get Amazon? Or how did that other county get those 1,000 houses? We always look at it in the rearview mirror and we do not look forward. I would challenge all of us that we need to set a vision, set a policy, give our staff clear direction. I think it would be much more comfortable to them. It's like having teenagers and you give them a car and don't give them any rules. They're just out there. They can do whatever they want until they get in trouble or until you have some kind of a conflict. So for me, 10 years is too long. For me, 1.5 years is too long. I believe that we need to move this forward. I also know that we have the statewide LAFCO conference here in October, and our staff is working on that, and they're going to be busy. But I would like to see this, that we have a conversation back here in September, and that by the October meeting, that we are ready to set forth a policy, that we've got staff giving us their first draft of it, and that we take it forward, because we don't meet in November. And you know what? I'm very respectful of what the counties and the cities are coming together on, but I know you all been working on this a long time and you haven't finished it. And I don't know that you will get it finished by December. I think what I heard was, well, then maybe we'll get an extension. We're separate. We need to set our own rules and our own policy. And as far as pricing, do we set the price of land? No. So I don't even know really why to us that matters. That's a deal with the developer and the person who's selling it. And that price is that price. That has nothing to do with what we all think it should be. We all would like it to go back to when Matt was on a mitigation committee, because then we could have maybe some affordable housing. But from a financial standpoint, we have missed the last downturn in the economy. So developers who were here, who were looking at housing to look at it, they're going, not now. There's too much uncertainty and the price is going up for both the person who will buy and the person who will sell has higher expectations. We're also seeing our agricultural companies doing more vertical. They're moving more and more things out of state, where they're doing hydroponic, where there's water. They're doing more things on the East Coast because it's closer to the population centers that are buying their product. We have to be aware of all of this. Can we control all of that? No, but we should not be an impediment to what anybody else is trying to do. But we should also control what happens in our community. And the land piece is so important. I don't know that we should be involved in from a land trust side, that someone from the land trust is telling us that that piece of property doesn't matter because it doesn't have water. Are we going to hire then a well person to go out and figure out if it's got water, that whether or not we're going to allow that? I'm wondering how far down into this we're going to get. So I see us as a policy body. I see us as, I would like to see us as somebody who is not a roadblock to providing what our community needs. And I think that that's really important. The part of consistency and certainty is so important. It's important for every person in our community and every person who comes from outside our community that wants to look here. So I am not, for one, willing to go to December and wait for all of these people to make their decisions or not. And then, oh my God, we've got Christmas. And so now we're going to have to go till January or February. So for me, I would be willing to make a motion that we make a decision by October.
Second.
Is this a question on the motion or do you just have comments?
I have comments.
Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Velasquez.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who spoke today too, and everyone who's been battling with this for quite some time. I do want to also thank our executive director, McKenna, because I think some of the information that she provided in the report is pretty consistent in terms of the flexibility. I know that we're talking about, 2-to-1 ratio, 1-to-1, whatnot. But I think what I read in the report is that some of the uncertainty or some of the flexibility in the provisions are to be able to give the cities that flexibility, to be able to give the city the control that the cities need to be able to decide what's in their best interest. And, Commissioner LAFCO, I just want to say that the cities have been working on this for a long time. We have an existing MOU, and that was part of the report that was provided. For some of the cities, we have that. It's not vague. And that MOU for us says it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So what this body does with that, I think it's really important, because as an independent body, we need to be also looking at those documents and being able to say, how do those come into factor? How do those are taken in, what are those taken into consideration as part of the mitigation ratios that we have? And I'm happy that we're working with the county to be able to come to an agreement, but we already have, there's flexibility and there's obviously changes that need to be made, because we now do have state housing mandates that I think for a lot of our communities and our South County communities are really impacted, because we are surrounded by ag. Unlike some of the other communities in the county, we are surrounded by ag. So I think we have to be able to also understand some of those exemptions. And I think it's coming back to the table and looking at what are those exemptions that we need now in order to make sure that we have the housing that our community needs. For many of us, and especially being the daughter of farm workers, that's a livelihood of the majority of our South County communities. So that's really critical that that's taken into consideration with the exemptions and looking at those. We have general plans that we're looking. So being able to understand, do we go by what the existing MOUs we have right now with the county? And for us, it's pretty clear. Then, we have to look at those updates to our general plan that are going to be consistent and are going to allow us to be able to move forward with what we know is certain right now. And I agree, we're an independent body, but the policies that we put together really have to be reflective of the needs of our county. And they can't be, if we don't want flexibility, as stated in the report, then the policies that we put together, then we as a body have to make sure that we are equitable when any of these developments come forth to us, that we're going to treat those policies in every of those cities equally, and make sure that we're not making changes depending on who's coming before us. So I think for me, there's a lot of work that we still need to do as an independent body. There's already a lot of information that we could be researching before we get to the December point. There is cities already that have ag mitigation policies. And how do we look at those? Do they have some of those best practices? And what do we take from that? What is us as a commission able to do some of that research and come back and say, these are the elements of these different ag mitigation policies that work for our community that we want to make sure that we put in place, or that we're looking at it, as well as having the South County cities continue the conversation with the county to make sure that what we put in place or the South County cities put in place are in the best interest of their communities for what those needs are. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to jump on the soapbox now. I'm not going to support your motion. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to support your motion. There's 3 representatives on this dais from the cities. There's 3 representatives on this dais from the county. And your staff spoke before us today asking for more time. And I know that we're an independent body. We are the decision makers. But I would really like to hear what they have to say. And I want that to come back. And then we can make our own decisions, whether we're going to listen to them or not. And there's just so much to this, and for being on the Gonzales Ag Mitigation Committee, it took us 3 to 4 years. It just, you've got to dredge out all the issues. And you do have to look at what that percentage of development is and how it's tied in to the percentage. I know that we don't have, any control of land costs, but whether it's reasonable or not reasonable, all you're doing, you're not buying land one for one. You're just buying that development right. And I think that needs to be clearly stated. And I think it's up for interpretation currently the way our policy is. So I just think we have time. Gonzalez's annexation is coming before us at the next meeting, I believe. Soledad, I think they're at the finish line right now with theirs. I think they've worked out who they're going to be, the landowner that's going to be mitigating the development. So I think those landowners have got all that worked out. So I don't think getting to November for an update on what the cities and the county have to say in their agreement, no harm, no foul there. I just think it would be the wrong direction after listening to staff today and community. One of the attorneys representing here today and landowners. I just think let's not go there. One other thing about the price, and I've heard that a couple of times this afternoon. There's so many things as being a builder is all the things that the state is passing down on us. Everybody's just worried about these house prices. You know, for such a small percentage of ag mitigation, and we've been doing it. Look at Mills Meyer down in King City and how successful that was for that ag mitigation, and that happened. And those are not reflected on the housing prices. What's reflected on those housing prices, or even in Soledad with that last annexation, that it's the new recycling mandates that are coming down from the state, and you have to go through the paperwork, or you got to hire another consultant just for your recycling. Abolishing natural gas in our homes. So you don't think that's raising the cost of housing? Solar mandates. We just throwing $15,000 a housing unit on top of our housing. I mean, what happens to the days when we used to be able to build these houses for $50 and $60 a foot? That was just 20 years ago. Now it's $300 a foot. It's crazy. Solar reflective roofs, another mandate set down from the state. I'm not saying that they're all bad things, but what happened to when the builder or the developer could choose what he provided to the homeowners, and then we could have lesser cost housing. We have to now hire an engineer to certify our housing to get a final inspection. They have to go through and make sure all the energy requirements are met. And to add at the ag mitigation piece, which has already been here, is historical. To me, it just doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal. There's so many other forces on us, even with these crazy TAMSI fees. And I understand why TAMSI fees are there, but we're all in favor of them. But by the time you do water and sewer impact fees, you got the school impact fees and TAMSI, then you throw these state mandates on it. I can't believe we can afford to build any house in this county or in the state. But anyway, that was my soapbox. We have a first and a second on the table. Yes. Mayor.
Just a point of clarification. I think we're dealing with two separate issues here. We're dealing with the will and the request of the cities to continue working with the county, and for us to hear that. But LAFCO and this board is on record with the county. And in the last meeting, and I was reading in the staff report, and thank you for including this, the motion from the June meeting included direction that in the meantime, staff should not participate in or make recommendations on the county's development of a draft ordinance until after the meeting with the Salinas Valley cities has taken place. That meeting has obviously taken place, but in the August 21st meeting, the requirements of LAFCO were reiterated in that meeting between the ag commissioner, the 5 cities, and LAFCO and the county. And so I have concerns that as we continue down this path, and this is an independent body, and I certainly understand if the will of this body wants to look at it separately, but I don't think we should have staff weighing in on the antiquated policies, indicating that that's currently what's in place. I think we have expressed interest in addressing and mitigating the policies that not mitigating, but changing the policies that are currently in place. I have concerns that as we continue those meetings and the cities and the counties are meeting, that LAFCO continues to weigh in on old policy. And I'm hoping that we can continue by not having them weigh in on what's currently in place with LAFCO until we can come up with new policies.
I totally disagree. How could you not move forward with ag mitigation when we've been doing it for so many years in this county and have a historical perspective? I want LAFCO at the table.
I'm not saying LAFCO not be at the table, but I'm saying that LAFCO staff should be letting, and obviously all the cities are here, but I mean, the cities and the counties, the city and the county should be aware that LAFCO, the body, is readdressing the policy.
Oh, you bet. I think that's everybody's well aware.
Well, right, but we're currently on record. That's my concern.
Kate, I'm going to put you on the.
I'll let our, thank you, Chair. I'll let our staff report of today and our staff report and presentation from our June 2023 meeting stand for themselves as to LAFCO's currently adopted policy and the practices and the issues and suggestions that we have for how to move forward.
Go ahead. Wendy?
So Mayor Carrero, so I hear you saying that you just want to make sure I understand. You want it to be understood that this body is open to considering changing our policies in the future. But until that time happens, our policies are our policies. And so I think it is important that our director and our staff be a part of the conversations that are happening. I mean, we've got all of our South County cities in the room with us right now. And I think it's clear to everyone that there is a discussion in the future to be had about what our policies, whether it's because it's been 13 years or because we want to change them or because conditions at the state have changed, that we're interested in having a conversation about relooking at our policies moving forward. But we do want to make sure we're doing that in a way that's consistent, or at least informed by, maybe not consistent, informed by the consensus that our city and county partnerships are coming up with. So
through the chair, just to respond to that, if I may. So I think the cities are here because LAFCO is on record saying 2-to-1, no exemptions. They continue to show up with the meetings, and they're asking us for consideration of 1-for-1, right? And to continue those meetings. But part of the problem is that LAFCO is sitting in on the meetings, having those conversations, and they're not congruent with what the cities are looking for. Those policies that LAFCO has on record are not congruent with what the cities are trying to accomplish, which is why they're here today.
Right. And I believe we're going to get there, and you'll be chair when it gets voted on.
If I make it that long.
So it's going to take us some time. We want to hear from the stakeholders out in the audience and get this back to us as soon as possible. Mayor Oglesby?
Yeah, I'm not sure she'll be chair when we voted on. I mean, are we saying we're not going to vote until when? Right. So already we prejudging, kicking it down the road, which is okay. But it's two things I think we're missing. Right. This little tap dance everybody's doing, wait on the county and the cities, and then we'll make a decision. If the LAFCO now is weighing in on the MOU with policies we may not be agreeing with 3 months from now, what good is that? Right. So I understand we want LAFCO there. But if they're bringing information that we're debating about now, what good is anything we get back? There may be some little tidbits of some new ways of doing stuff, some stuff like that, right? But really, if they're weighing in on policy we're not sure about, I'm not sure that makes sense to me. That's the first thing. The second thing is I thought we're confusing a couple of things. I thought the motion was about us starting this policy conversation, not necessarily stopping LAFCO executive director from attending the meetings, definitely not short-circuiting the county and the city's MOU. And then I don't even know how Solidad got up in there with possibility about their agreement is at jeopardy. We settled that a couple of months ago. Whatever they have is moving forward.
Right.
No, I'm just saying, right? I don't even know how we were talking about that. But I thought my concern, and I thought the motion, maybe I'm wrong, is how and when do we start talking about discussing the changes in our policies and procedures? That has nothing to do with the MOU, right? That's why I said before is we can always insert 1-to-1, 2-for-1, 3-for-1 timing exemptions. But if we don't start even talking about changing the policies into January, February, I have concerns with that.
Okay.
So that's all I'm saying, Chair, is, if we can go forward without confusing the two as though I'm trying to stop the conversation with the county and the cities.
Okay.
That's okay.
So I'm going to take that. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to clarify because thank you, Commissioner Oglesby, and you're right. I think there's been a lot of different conversations I think taking place, but I just want to go back to what the report says, and please let me know if this is not clear. But in the mitigation ratios, which seems to be kind of the more heavily discussed topic, it does say LAFCO's adopted policy does not establish a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 or any other fixed ratios as a mitigation standard to be met. So I want to be clear that we are all in agreement with that. In practice, LAFCO approved annexations have generally implemented agriculture mitigation ranging between a 1-to-1 and a 2-to-1. Based on the staff's research and what we saw on the last presentation and what we have in our report since 2000, what's been approved has been 1-to-5 or a 1-to-1 ratio. So I just want to be clear that we are not saying and that LAFCO's position is that we have to do a 2-to-1 because the report does not say that. What we have in front of us doesn't say that. What was presented to us last time doesn't say that. So am I incorrect? I guess I'm missing that piece of the LAFCO staff. We have the mitigation. Chair, I understand that's what we have, but I'm just confused about the adamancy of LAFCO staff being present in some of these conversations, because what I see in front of me says, we're not saying it's a 2-to-1. That's not what's been said.
Right. And I think that's historical policies and procedures is what you're reading off of that was presented to us today.
That is correct, Chair. The reference by Commissioner Velasquez is to near the top of page 3 of today's staff report under the heading of mitigation ratios. And in the first 3 sentences do correctly state what the current practices are, not of your LAFCO staff, but of the commission. Every one of the mitigations that have been approved over the last 20 some years have been approvals from the commission. These are not approval actions by staff. And on balance, the practice has been of this commission to date and a mitigation ratio of about 1.5 acres preserved for every 1 acre annexed to a city. And we're also well aware of the conversations and requests from our cities that ratio should be stated in policy as a 1-to-1. So we hear that request. Thank you.
I'm going to take this back to the maker of the motion. So to move this forward, as Mayor Oglesby said, what do you envision as your steps as leading the charge forward on bringing this back to the commission at the next meeting? Should we just go through our existing policies and procedures at a board on the dais and just move this thing down the path? And then, of course, welcome the feedback that we're going to get from the city and the county in the future, and invite them before we make our final blessing of our new policy.
Yes. So I believe because we are an independent body that we should be working concurrently within ourselves, with our staff, to set the policy that we would like to see. And I understand we've got how many are in, how many projects do we have pending in some form? 10, 12? To give those people, which are some of you, certainty on what you can tell a prospective developer or home builder that this is what it's going to be. Right now, you don't know. We're going to go from 1.1 to 2.1, depending on how we feel about it and how we feel about your community and how we feel about that developer. I don't know what we use. I'm just telling you, we're all over the board on it. So I'm asking that we be a fair body, that we have something that you can look at and you can tell people. And then if they want to go forward with you all, with all of your rules and regulations, that's fine. We're not into that. We are only into the mitigation piece of what we're going to require for agricultural mitigation. And so for me, if we could not kick the can down to December, because no offense to everybody in the audience and to the county, but this thing has gone on forever. I see a little urgency, probably because we brought it up at our last meeting and said, whoa, what's going on? But that's a small fire. And I have seen these fires come up before, and then they're like, oh, nobody's paying attention. Now I'm going back to Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, and we'll be into 2024, and you will have no decisions between the county and the city. I would bet you my car. So I'm going to say right now, the October. I think somebody needs to know, though it is in Hal's name. I think it's really important that by October that we care enough about our jobs here. And I'm going to say it that way, that we bring it back and we start with the policy and we start tearing into it and seeing what our policy is and what we need to refresh given the circumstances that we are now dealing with in 2023. And I don't want to see this go till 2024, Matt. I'll be embarrassed for all of us if then we're no different than all of the staff people who are all talking about it for a year and a half or 10 years or however. I'm not a staff person, never will be, would have been fired a long time ago. I just like to see things move forward.
Sure.
So
Kate, would you have enough direction on that to bring something to the commission for us to move forward on our policies and procedures?
Chair, I think I'm hearing a recommendation in the motion to come back at the meeting in October so that the commission can have an in-depth conversation about key elements of the policy and practices and can consider, the commission can discuss potential changes and give direction in October. So it's more of a kind of a bit of a workshop format, I suppose it would be, to come back and really to continue this conversation, but in more detail. You have a lot of background now, you have some options, and we do welcome input from our commissioners as well as input that we are receiving from our cities and the county and other stakeholders in the process.
Okay.
yes, I know.
Supervisor Church.
Yeah, and maybe it's because I'm a little newer to this commission here, but yeah, I know we're talking about housing, and when I hear housing, I hear what could we do on affordable housing to a great degree. That's what we're really needing. I think Chair Gurley pointed out how difficult it is to do affordable housing by design. And the problem you have there is you have stuff coming down as you, and I'm not getting off ag mitigation. I'm using an example here, but you have things come down from the state that are just hard and fast. And I want to make sure whatever we do is really going to be the right thing at this point. And I don't want to hurry something through to say, well, we've got it here. And I don't want to go really long and do nothing. I just want to make sure we're doing the right thing. And so I'm, don't know if I'm seeing a timeline on here. I would like a timeline with some speed, but I don't want to do the wrong thing. That's basically it. Because when we start doing the wrong thing, then we got to undo it. And that opens up a whole nother problem.
could I make an alternative or substitute motion that we continue this discussion on December 4th with information in front of us about all of our county LAFCO or our Monterey County LAFCO policies, as well as an update about the city-county conversation, specifically with information about the timing exceptions, mitigation reports, and I think there are a couple other things that someone mentioned. Some information about the cost of purchasing ag mitigation land, even though we're not responsible for deciding it, but bringing all that information back to us so that we can have it in front of us with a workshop on December 4th would be my substitute motion.
Saffarina, are you clear on the first motion?
Chair, it seems that I was actually going to ask if Commissioner Leffel could repeat her motion just so that I can follow up with Commissioner Root Askew's motion as well as substitute motion.
Yeah, we'll vote on the substitute first, but Mary Ann, could you go ahead and restate your motion?
Please.
I move that at the October regularly scheduled LAFCO meeting on the 4th Monday of October, whatever that date is, that we begin the process of looking at policy, that we start the discussion. It can be a workshop, that's fine, but that we dig into them and decide which pieces of that policy we want to adopt, we want to change, we want to leave alone, and that we look at it, that we refresh it, and that we make it consistent with the needs of our community today.
Okay, and we have a second from Craig.
Are you good with that second?
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the substitute motion, is there a second on the substitute motion?
Repeat substitute again, just clarification.
My substitute motion would be that we do the same thing, but that we put it on the agenda for December 4th so that we have the benefit of additional information, hopefully some consensus from our Salinas Valley cities, so that informs us as we engage in that conversation. I think we could spin our wheels if we try to go through this process, and we could create more confusion and more deter from the consensus that's being built in a different space.
I will say.
The substitute motion moved in second. And questions on the substitute motion?
Question. Waiting till December is doing nothing. With respect, I said it with respect. Because the thing is, again, we're hearing wait till December to see what the MOU says. And it makes sense to say that may inform us, but is that inform us to do what? Start the conversation. The original motion is just start the conversation, not make a decision. We need to start the conversation, and in December, get more information because we're not meeting in November.
Sure.
That's what I don't understand is, are we really telling everybody that's listening to this, we can't start our own policy discussion about changing our policy, reviewing our policy until some outside group vote on an MOU on one particular issue? That's what I'm saying. We get wrapped up in them coming up with MOU about mitigation. We're talking about our whole policy. And if we're saying our policy is tied to their discussions, it had to be in line with their discussions, I have issues with that. Because now what are we doing? I mean, we don't need to be here if all we're going to do is adopt if we're going to adopt policies that implements the counties and the cities MOU as LAFCO policy. Okay. I think we're old enough to come up with our own thoughts, and if we want to adjust them as information come in December or January, it can come in. And then my last point is, if you read the staff report, they already admit the county. And that's no bashing the county. That's not the issue. The conversation, they said, will go probably into 2024. Okay. It will be extended to 2024. So December is not even a hard number by their account. So thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. I guess I have a couple of questions. When we talk about, reviewing the policies, changing the policies, what's the process that we would go through to accomplish that?
I think we're probably just going to start on page 1 of policies and have it be a workshop and decide if this dais agrees with what's set out there and just make our way through everything that's been presented to us and see if, we agree. Is it, something that we did 20 years ago? Does it currently meet what our needs are in the community now with housing and land use? Land use has changed in 20 years in this county. So we need to understand that. In fact, I think might be up for another county general plan shortly, but
We're still.
We're only now at what, 10 years overdue?
yeah.
So we keep a fine timeline. So I think I appreciate very much your description of it. However, I feel like if we do that it's going to be an exercise of great frustration and an extremely lengthy one. I'm wondering if we could step back and see if there is another way where we could have a consultant. I'm sure that there are people that we've worked with in the past who would be able to frame all of this for us and put the policies, in some way that would give us something from which we could actually work, rather than just trying to start at the very beginning and go through every policy that we have. I mean, I'm sure that there are more than 10 policies. I'm sure that how many policies are there?
We actually, may I speak through the chair, Commissioner, we actually have one agricultural preservation policy, and it's, I believe, one paragraph long, one paragraph of one page. But so the policy itself is very, very brief, and it was deliberately written at the time to be brief and very broad. It's the implementation, the practices that are talked about as elements 1, 2, and 3 in the staff report, focusing on timing, exceptions, mitigation ratios, and there's a few other key elements of practice. So those practices are not officially written as part of the policy, and so that would be one idea that the commission could consider, is to clarify the practices by writing them by adding some sentences to the policy.
And are we talking about only the ag policy then? We're not going through all of the policies of the organization.
That is correct.
Just the one policy.
Commissioner Velasquez.
Yeah, I've got my answers. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And the conversation, and I agree that we take a look at it and we start a policy discussion, especially because it is pretty broad in the ag mitigation. But I would urge this commission to take into consideration also, when we're looking at having that workshop, that we're also looking at the existing MOUs with the city, because the cities have existing MOUs already that address this specific item under ag mitigation, and that we also come back and look at other cities. And I like the idea of having a consultant, but to look at other cities and the best practices that have already been put in place. There are other cities that are nearby other counties nearby us that have a lot of similar, agriculture areas, that we bring some of those, but some of that language to look at, to also consider whether that is something that this commission would like to take some of those languages. But I think it's important for us. There's already some counties doing this. Can we get some of those best practices to be part of the conversation in the workshop?
Sure. Okay, we have a motion, substitute motion on the table. We have a second. I guess we can go ahead and do a roll call vote on the substitute motion first.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Root to ask you.
Aye.
Commissioner Church. Commissioner Leffel. Commissioner Oglesby.
No.
Commissioner Craig.
No.
And Commissioner Corley.
No. Okay, now we'll speak.
Mr. Khan, because Waitress is not.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
Oh, I did not listen with the vote.
Sorry about that. And Commissioner Kong.
What do we got here? We got 3 no's and 2 yeses. Is that what it is?
We'd have to ask Farina.
Correct.
No, it's 4.
You have 4 no's. You have a no from Leffel, you had a no from Oglesby, you had a no from Craig, and we had a
No from Gorley.
no from Gorley.
So it's 2-4.
2-4.
In this point, I think I'm just abstaining from all this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move to the main motion that Mary Ann was presented and a second by Mayor Craig. All those in favor, let's go for a roll call vote on that.
Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Root Askew, Commissioner Church, Commissioner Kong,
I'll say yes.
Commissioner Leffel, Commissioner Oglesby,
Aye.
Commissioner Craig,
Aye.
and Commissioner Gorley.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. You have clear direction of where we're headed. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we will be able to incorporate, sorry, Mr. Chair, we will be able to incorporate some of Mayor Velasquez's suggestions of polling other counties nearby so we don't reinvent the wheel. Great, thank you.
Yes. But we'll accept it. We'll accept it.
Okay, we'll move on to old business. City of Soledad Miramonte annexation condition compliance status report.
Thank you. This item will be presented by Principal Analyst Darren McBain.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and members of the Commission. This item is a status report and a request for the Commission's input on the proposed agricultural mitigation for the Miramonte annexation to the City of Soledad. This past December, the Commission approved this annexation with a special condition of approval requiring ag mitigation to be proposed and finalized to the satisfaction of the LAFCO executive officer before the annexation can be recorded and put into effect, thereby allowing development of the site to move ahead. The city, working with the landowner, is being proactive in addressing this condition of approval. In the last few months, Megan Hunter, the new city manager, has been reaching out to farm landowners to see what opportunities there may be out there for conservation easement receiver sites other than the Gabalin Mountain Ranch site that the city had proposed last year as agricultural mitigation. During the public hearings last year for the annexation, staff had expressed concerns about the Gabalin Mountain Ranch's suitability as a mitigation site, given that the site is about 2 miles out from the existing city limits, the main city limits, I should say, and probably not under any particular development pressure in the foreseeable future. And the commission also did not act to accept that site as mitigation at the time of the public hearings on the annexation last year. The city's memo and attachments in your packet today document the city's recent outreach efforts to look at other potential opportunity sites. And Ms. Hunter is also here today to give some more context from the city's point of view. Based on the information the city has given to LAFCO staff and that we've forwarded along to the commission that you have before you today, it sounds like some of that outreach is still in progress and there may be still some possibility of reaching an agreement for some other site or sites to be part of the ag mitigation proposal to satisfy the commission's condition of approval. But the city's memo is also asking LAFCO to find that Gabalin Mountain Ranch site to be acceptable for ag mitigation purposes, as well as an additional 90 acres on lands located roughly halfway between Gonzales and the Soledad correctional facilities. In closing, the item before you today isn't for the commission to approve or disapprove an ag mitigation proposal. The commission's condition of approval already tasked the LAFCO EO with negotiating a satisfactory set of agricultural mitigation actions, conservation easements, or in lieu fee payments or some combination. Instead, staff is here today asking the commission to review the city's updates, the new information received from the city, that is, receive public comments and provide input to staff on the proposed ag mitigation. Staff will then continue to work with the city and the landowner on addressing this condition of approval so LAFCO can finalize this annexation and enable development of the site to proceed and provide much needed housing and economic development for the Soledad community. Thank you.
that conclude your report?
It does. Thank you, Chair.
We'll open this up for public comment. Or Megan, did you want to get up and say a few words?
My name is Megan Hunter. I'm the city manager for the city of Soledad. And firstly, I did want to thank LAFCO staff, Executive Officer Kate McKenna and Darren for agreeing to meet with us and help us through the mitigation. As many of you might be aware, I became city manager in mid-May. And at the time, Kate and Darren were very gracious in educating me about what had occurred. And the city decided to step in to look to see how we could facilitate closer resolution to the ag mitigation concerns that were expressed by LAFCO when this commission decided to conditionally approve the annexation and agricultural mitigation to the satisfaction of LAFCO's executive director. I do want to note, as Mayor Velasquez was indicating, that the city actually has a memorandum of agreement with the county, which was attached to your report. The developers actually use this memorandum of agreement with the county to look for property to fulfill the ag mitigation. We, in turn, when I got involved back in May, in talking to LAFCO staff and the Ag Land Trust, there was some question about the adequacy of the property. We did not take a position that the property was inadequate, and indeed we do think it continues to be inadequate ag mitigation. But we felt it would be fair for us to reach out to other agricultural properties in and around Soledad to see if there was a better property that we could identify that could be a substitute, an alternative for the ag mitigation that was selected by the developers. We initiated that outreach on June 27th. We reached out to all of the properties. We did get some inquiries based on the letter that I'd sent out on that date. A lot of the properties that responded to us sit in the Salinas River floodplain, and therefore, in my opinion, are less sensitive to development than the properties that were identified for the ag mitigation by the developer team. The one property that we had heard that was of great interest as an ag mitigation property was the Braga property just on the city's edge. And this weekend, I was able to confirm in writing that they are not interested in a conservation easement at this time. We have done a pretty exhaustive search of the properties surrounding the city of Soledad. And I do recognize that there are some goals in terms of creating kind of urban edges and not creating sprawl, which I think is a commendable goal. But the practicality of it is that folks that we have reached out to are either in conservation easement or not interested in a conservation easement at this time. So given that work that we've done, the city of Soledad would request that that the developer's mitigation is considered as fulfilling the requirements, is adequate, that we could agendize this item for September. And we're also asking for an extension so that we can secure, we can do the work that would put those conservation easements in place. I do want to mention, keep in mind that the three Salinas Valley cities, Gonzales, Greenfield, and Soledad, are under 3 square miles each. You might Google Soledad and see it's bigger, but that includes the prison property, our wastewater treatment facility, a landfill. Those are properties that are not developable. Those 3 cities have extremely high density. If you take out Soledad's undevelopable area, it would be the densest city in Monterey County. We're not going to be able to build up. If we can't move forward with Miramonte, we simply won't meet our RENA numbers. We won't be able to provide affordable housing. We just released a draft of our housing element on Friday, and we anticipate that during that cycle, we'll be able to get 379 units of affordable housing through Miramonte. That is so critical for our communities that are living in overcrowded conditions. We need to get those affordable housing units built. This annexation really needs to move forward with haste so that we can move that development forward and ensure that our families, many of them who are farmers, have places to live. So with that, I conclude my comments and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Megan.
Yes, one question, Caitlin, for you. Did you say that the vineyard property you believe it is adequate?
Yes, we do.
I couldn't, when you said it, I was like, did she say inadequate?
No,
or adequate?
adequate. And we did furnish well tests for those properties as part of the report. There is one admittedly that's older from 2014, but we should have actually any day now, we should have those results that will confirm that those properties are adequately served by water.
I just wanted to make sure. I thought I heard that, but I wanted to make sure it was on the record that you said it is adequate.
Yeah, thank you.
So it is currently in ag production. And that's what we're going after. And this is a boundary property between the city limits of Soledad and the prison. And that's where we want these parcels. So
I just wanted to be clear.
We'll open this up for public comment. Anybody else from the public on this? Anybody on Zoom? Oh, yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Laith Aga, project manager for Miramonte subdivision. So we did follow the 2016 MOA. It seemed very clear that would be the objective. One thing that's been left out is that the resolution for annexation directs us to follow the 2016 MOA. So to us, it seems like pretty clear cut. The plan that we have presented kind of covers all the bases. So I want to make that clear that that is why we have come with the plan that we have. So thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Paul Moncrief again, representing the Aga family. Mr. McBain, did I hear you say that LAFCO staff now believes that the Gavilan Vineyard is sufficient? Or did I misunderstand that?
In my remarks, I had mentioned that staff had expressed concerns about the suitability of the Gavilan site as a mitigation site during the staff reports and the public hearing phase last year. Staff is committed to working with the city to resolve this matter. Staff is not saying no to this site, but we think it's important to get it right, and we are asking for the commission's input. I think that's what I said, and hopefully that clarifies it.
It does. Thank you. And so it seems that the main concern has to do with water. That's what's been brought up to me. I believe that comes from a letter that was sent by the executive director of the Ag Land Trust probably 18 months ago with no support for that notion. We have provided well reports that show that the property produces more than sufficient water for ag production. Again, it is in ag production now. I found out today, and I blame myself for this, I must not have asked the right question, that there is an additional well on that property that produces another 850 gallons per minute, which brings the total volume up to approximately 2,200 gallons per minute, which is far in excess of what's required for the production that it's in. The other issue seems to be location. I agree with Chair Gordley that it's right on the boundary of the urban growth boundary. We haven't found any better. I think I've expressed before, I represent many of the landlords around Soledad. I asked them directly. They said no, or they did not respond. And I know I've had this experience, perhaps some of you have as well. When you ask somebody to a dance and they don't respond, that's a no. And that's what we got. So this is the best property we could find. We've got a very willing landowner. It's good ground. And frankly, I represent Mr. Francione as well, and he's a bit distressed that it's out here in a public forum that somehow he doesn't have enough water. He makes his living selling premium grapes to high-end wineries on long-term contracts. And the notion that he doesn't have enough water to do that without any support for that notion is not something that should be said. It's potentially detrimental to his business. And again, we've provided the information that it's simply not true. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else from the public? Okay.
No hands are raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Did we need a motion of action, or are we going to just see this at our next meeting?
Chair Gorley. Oh,
Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
It's supposed to be an update. So I was concerned too when I read in the staff report that it says, I guess I'm trying to figure out where did this statement come from, is on this side due to concerns including long-term water supply for irrigation. Where did that concern come from? How do we generate that information?
Staff, Darren?
Okay. So what's discussed in the staff report is, if I could go back for a second. So we have an ag mitigation condition of approval here that requires ag mitigation to be identified, proposed, and carried out. And that would typically involve bringing in a land trust to accept a conservation easement or in lieu fee payments to fund future conservation easements. So the ag land trust the land trust that has typically been involved in accepting conservation easements here in Monterey County has been the ag land trust. And in this case, we, as staff, in conjunction working with the city staff, have met with the ag land trust, and staff's understanding is that the ag land trust has concerns about a long-term water supply to support ag operations on that site as a sustainable matter going forward to support ag operations permanently, which is basically what would take place with a conservation easement. A land trust would be accepting a conservation easement to keep that land in ag preservation and to have ag operations continue indefinitely. So staff's understanding is that the ag land trust, this particular land trust, the ag land trust, may be unwilling to accept a conservation easement on this site because of concerns about a permanent long-term water supply. These are not staff's concerns. These are the concerns that the ag land trust has voiced to us in meetings with them, and the logistical concern there is that, as I said, we need, in order to effectuate this condition of approval and carry it out, we would need a land trust to accept a conservation easement. And if it's not this particular land trust, it would need to be some other land trust.
I would just say, Chair, well, I don't necessarily want us to go back and forth, because I think Darren just said that statement is not a concern of LAFCO's staff. That's what he just said. It's not a concern. So that must mean water is there. Other people can have their own opinion, and we need to be clear, because we have some legal duties to be saying stuff that is right and not get caught in between if we don't have the proof, I would imagine. And my ending comment is that I understand that some type of easement, I understand, you go in with some type of ag trust, or there's exemptions, right? Or there's other ways to do it, I would imagine.
In lieu fees.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure.
And so see how we were digging ourselves into a hole that was only one way to go. And then when someone says, hey, there's no water in the end of that hole, hey, the developer is saying, well, this thing may not go through. The city's saying this thing may not go through. But that's why I was talking about the policies of exemption. And so I just wanted to put on the record that LAFCO was not denigrating the property, because I didn't want us to be in that position of win or lose. So thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt you guys, but I thought it was important that we clarify that statement
Certainly.
that there is water to that property.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else from the commission?
Just a question.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Yeah, just a little, since we're talking about the water and the wells, just how deep are these wells? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head. Technologists.
Okay. Well, I mean, it should be information out there is on this.
I think it is in the well reports.
I don't remember seeing that right now. And so I'm sure it's in there, but I'm hoping somebody could answer it for me today.
Just so you're familiar, I think there's 3 aquifers that touch the city of Soledad. This is on the eastern bench, and it doesn't see the magnitude of recharge that we see in the other aquifers with the river. So I think that's where our farmland trust was coming from, was the level of recharge to the east aquifer, and that's where this water is coming from. But it's proven. I've seen the vines grow there my whole life, so I know that it's in ag production, and it certainly has the water that is needed for this. Okay. City Manager Megan Hunn.
Yeah, some new piece of information, and staff didn't know this, but the developer has reached out to the California Farmland Trust, and they are interested. So in the properties, and I hope I didn't misstate that, but
that's
yeah.
what I was going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else from the commission? Commissioner Liefel?
Sorry, we're discussing the well. It's 330. We were discussing the well depth.
Okay.
Commissioner Church's question. Sorry.
Okay, I don't believe we needed action from the commission.
That's correct. We appreciate your questions and input, and we'll be working very closely with City Manager Megan Hunter to resolve this and get it addressed. And you can expect to see next month a request to extend the time frame that the city has to address this condition, just in the event that we get close to December, and it's still taking additional time to get easements and documents prepared and recorded. Our experience is that can take quite a while. So that's a fallback to have that extension of time, and you'll receive that next month.
Megan?
Yeah, we would request that the item is brought back, not just the extension, but to know if this is adequate and we can move forward with the proposal.
Right. We do plan to provide this as a monthly status report to the commission and keep you informed. It is a high priority for staff.
Thank you.
But the chair, was she talking about action, or she's just talking about for an update? I don't think she's looking for us just to get an update. If I'm listening to her, I'm gonna just be real.
No, it's currently just an update. At our next meeting, we'll be able to take action.
Okay, I just want to be clear. We should be clear about. She should be stating what she really wants.
Action.
Yeah.
She's
melding action.
Yeah. To come back, correct, Megan, to take action on that based on all the information provided. And then just also, obviously, there's a lot of already communications with different property owners to try to look at other avenues. So all that's been done, and that has not been, nothing has came to fruition from that. So the city wants action on that.
Okay. Do you want to add to that, Kate?
I think that the action that the city is looking for really is determination to move ahead with the ag mitigation proposal as presented. And from my perspective, a great deal of progress has been made since Megan's arrival at the city in May. In addition to the efforts that she has personally made in looking for alternative sites, in coming to a resolution on that, there has been clarity now that an additional land trust has been tentatively identified who can step in and take on this work. And in addition, very importantly, in the last few weeks. There has been a commitment from the property owner that the timing to execute this mitigation is prior to recordation of the annexation. Until this summer, the written proposal from the city, from the property owner, was that the mitigation was to be executed over time as part of subdivision maps, final maps, years from now. And so I consider that that progress to be probably the most significant item to report to you now. That was very important. That matter is now settled. I think that we've settled on the sites and can just move forward with the city. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of the commission? Okay, I think we can move it. Thank you. Next, new business, consider the alternate public member appointment to LAFCO. Receive the executive officer's report.
Thank you, Chair. This will be presented by Jonathan Brinkman, our senior analyst.
Thank you, Chair Gorley and members of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to present this item. Following up from our June 26th meeting, after that meeting ended, we heard about Commissioner Steve Snodgrass resigning his seat. So as we're charged with the state law that LAFCO abides by, and the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, staff advertised for the remainder of the unexpired term for the alternate public member position. And that was a notice that went in local newspapers, as well as a press release that was given to local media. And staff also reached out to various community associations, including LULAC of Salinas and North County, the NAACP Monterey Bay chapter, and several other community groups, including the Centers for Community Advocacy. And so with this matter, we set a deadline, and by that deadline in July, we received 7 applications. However, one of the 7 applications was not received by the deadline. So that's was not moved for consideration. But of the 6 applications, 2 of the applicants also served on other boards and commissions for special districts, one for special districts and one for a county advisory commission. So they chose, we followed up with those candidates. They were not willing to resign those 2 seats if appointed to the LAFCO seat, which was a prerequisite. So they chose not to proceed in consideration. So that has left us with a total of 4 candidates for consideration today. And just a note on this matter that this according to the CKH Act, Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, it takes 4 votes to appoint the public member, and 1 vote must be from at least 1 county representative, 1 city representative, 1 district representative, and the public member is not permitted to vote on the vote itself. So with that, the recommendations today are 1, to the commission receive the report from the executive officer, 2, to invite the alternate public member candidates to make introductory statements, and 3rd, to receive public comment, and then the 4th, to either make an appointment of one of the candidates to serve in the alternate public member seat, or to continue consideration to the next meeting. And that's and staff's report.
Okay, thank you. I understand we have one of the candidates in the audience. Maybe. Would you mind coming up and introducing yourself?
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Gary Hoffman. I've lived in Monterey County for 17 years. I've spent my entire adult life in public service. Most recently, I served on the Monterey County civil grand jury for the last 2 years. Been proud of the work that we did there. Prior to that, my job with the State Department of Public Health's drinking water program gave me the opportunity to travel around Monterey County a lot and looking at the government entities and special districts from the standpoint of evaluating their capabilities from a technical perspective, managerial perspective, to operate actually the water systems. I support the role that LAFCO plays. And in fact, currently I was selected to be a trainer for grand juries around the state. And one of the things we do is we recommend to grand juries to look at the MSRs for their particular counties as a source of information to help them determine what agencies and entities they want to potentially investigate. So that's pretty much all I had, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the dais?
I just want to say I'm impressed he didn't go running from the room.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any public comment?
The other three candidates are available on Zoom. So
Okay,
Robert Roach is available on Zoom.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Roach, could you please unmute yourself and start your introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I heard?
Yes.
Thank you. I retired from an executive management level position at the County of Monterey nearly 5 years ago, and I've since been looking for opportunities to give back and serve the community with the skills I've acquired. I think this opening is a great opportunity to do that, and one for which I'm particularly suited. The annexation and development of agricultural lands is obviously an important ongoing issue for LAFCO. We've heard this afternoon, also for the County of Monterey and the cities. I have decades of experience dealing with ag-urban land use issues in my positions as Chief Deputy, as Assistant Agricultural Commissioner, and Interim Ag Commissioner. I was on the 2010 GPU team, General Plan Update team, and worked on the agricultural lands mitigation policy now being drafted at the county and on its ag buffer policies. I followed the county's ag mitigation policy development effort from the Planning Commission to the Ag Advisory Ad Hoc Committee. With the Agricultural Commissioner and County Administration, I reconstituted the non-functional Ag Advisory Committee into the Agricultural Land Use Advisory that it is today. And I staffed that committee for many years and heard many annexations and ag land use issues debated there. I'm familiar at some level with nearly all the annexations mentioned in your agenda packet for this meeting. As the Assistant Ag Commissioner, I was the point person for land use issues, and when we created a new position of Ag Resource and Policy Manager, I managed the incumbents. All ag land use issues and annexations affecting agriculture came through our office, and many went to the Ag Advisory Committee. The rest were handled by our department. Future LAFCO agendas will have many very important agricultural urban land use planning issues that will determine the future of Monterey County. I'm the candidate who has the best skill set and experience for these challenges. I will advocate for strong policies to protect and conserve our limited supply of agricultural lands, but I recognize the need to balance the preservation of agricultural land and open space with a need for orderly development, housing, and jobs. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Ronald Rowland.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to become acquainted with all of you and Commissioner Gorley and company. I appreciate the conversations I've listened to for the last hour and a half and the discussions about policies and non-policies. You may have seen the material that I provided that talks about my background. I don't have the planning background and the agriculture that the other gentleman have professed. I do have quite a plethora of experience in management, command controls, and military applications, and in particular computer science and AI. I think that from what I've heard and the issues concerning policies and non-policies and lack of policies, one of the things that I would focus on is absolutely planning to create a policy as soon as possible, as Marianne Leffel has mentioned, to get it in order that you've got a springboard to move forward. I think with that, I'll just finish with the fact that I've got some time on my hands. Currently, it's aloha from me from Honolulu. But thank you very much for the opportunity, and I look forward to serving with the board.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Mike Bickle, are you available? Is he on with us?
Yeah, Mike, we can see you, or at least I can see you, but we can't hear your voice yet. Okay, you're for some reason your audio is still not feeding through. Yeah. Yes, I could see his mouth move, so it's an audio problem. Yes, yes. He's dialing right now. He's got his cell phone.
So I think this works. There we go. Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I'm a local business owner of the community. I've lived in Monterey County most of my life. I don't have a whole lot of board experience or anything like that, but I think I do bring a different perspective to the board. You know, like Steve had mentioned earlier, I hadn't even really heard of LAFCO until I was invited to apply onto this board and I saw it. And it's obviously something that's very important in this area to our community and our growth. You know, I've been aware of, the fact that there was this function out there in the government. And when I heard about it, I was like, well, that could be something I could contribute a perspective on anyway. As I said, I've lived here for most of my life. I've got a construction company and employ about 40 to 50 people in a local construction business. So I can appreciate the needs of the county from a couple of different perspectives, both from a construction perspective as a local community member, as well as somebody that has a number of employees that do struggle for housing at times. So while the need for housing needs to be balanced with the agricultural communities, it also needs to be considered strongly. And I mean, I listening to the board and the debate that was going on today, and I think that's obvious that this board really does consider the needs of the community, both from an agricultural standpoint as well as an affordable housing standpoint. And I know we have the future growth area here in Salinas, and I know we've got some projects there in Soledad, and those are all great projects that I know this board has already been very instrumental on. But I think I do have a unique perspective, definitely a perspective of a public member on this board. And I don't know if anybody's got any questions for me.
Mike, would you mind, when you were speaking, you were actually on your cell phone camera, was shooting a video. Would you mind just go ahead and speak again, and then we could all actually see your face, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, sorry, my other camera's still on. Sorry
There you
about
are.
that. Is that up?
There you go, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Anyway, yeah. Were there any questions regarding any of that?
Nope. I think we're good, Mike. And I really appreciate your time today, and we'll be making this decision here shortly. Thank you.
All right, great.
All right, commission, what's your pleasure? I think we've got 4 great candidates. I can't vote on any of them. Just from my personal perspective, I've worked with Robert Roach at the county level, instrumental on moving a lot forward with our ag mitigation in the past with the city of Gonzales and the landfill issues. And then, of course, Mike Bickle, we know we've crossed paths for the last 30 years in business in the valley. So outstanding, both of them outstanding, great candidates. But what's the pleasure of the dais? Anybody have a nomination?
Yeah, I nominate Ronald Rowland.
Do we have a second? Okay, little die. Go ahead.
Did you want to make any additional comments about your?
Well, I was going to wait for the chair. I mean, I thought he was, I looked at all of their resumes and listened to them all. And I think he was a balance between, either end, right? And I thought he was the only one talking about policy and procedures and how do we move forward. And I thought that was very important. And I think he has the background and the mentality to work with us to move our conversations forward. So I just think he's the right person when you add them all up, not taking away from anybody else, but yes.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay. Mary Ann, did you have a question on the motion?
No, I was going to speak to another candidate.
Okay.
And why?
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. We'll go ahead and call the question. Is that appropriate?
No, I think for purpose of discussion, we should probably have a more, so you have a motion and a second.
Sure.
You go to discussion. And then if that's where I think others can weigh in on why they would or would not support.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to do it right, then we'll just accept all nominations and then close the nominations. Then we can speak on everybody. And then if there's a motion, but if we're just going to take a step back, then everybody should be able to put whoever they want forward and then close the nominations.
Okay. We have a nomination, our first nomination for Ronald Rowland. Do we have any additional nominations or discussion?
I would, I think, for the public member position, it's really good to have balance. And I think, Mr. Bickle is a very good choice too. You're both in the construction. So my first preference actually is going to go for Bob Roach. Is going to be my nomination on there because I do think he has a broad experience, which I think is important. So that'd be my motion.
We have a nomination on the floor for Robert Roach. Do we have a second on that nomination? Okay. Do we, any further nominations? Mary Ann, you're laughing at me. What's going on?
I'm laughing. I actually like Mr. Bickle because he is truly a public member. And I think because we lost a voice from North County, and we have so many issues from the north part of Salinas, we hear a lot from South County, but we don't ever hear very much from North County. And I think this winter has really pointed out how much work we have to do up there. So it would be kind of refreshing, I think, to have someone who is truly the public, who hasn't been involved with, no offense, Gary, but hasn't been involved with government agencies and doesn't really know how it works, but wants to speak for the public. So he would be my nomination.
Do we have a second on that nomination? Okay.
Am I allowed to have a second? I will second that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other further nominations? Okay, our next step would be to vote on the first nomination. Is that correct? Okay. All in favor of Ronald Rowland. Can we just get a roll? Do you want a roll call vote?
I think, yes, because of the complexity of voting, I think
Okay.
a roll call vote would be very helpful. Thank you.
Safrina?
Commissioner Root Askew?
Made second, so I should say yes.
Just say yes. Thank you. Commissioner Church?
I'm going to abstain on the first one here because I just don't know if I know enough at this point.
You abstain. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Leffel? Commissioner Oglesby?
Aye.
Vice Chair Craig?
No.
So we have 3-2.
Mr. Khan.
Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Kong?
No.
Noes pass.
Okay, we'll move on to candidate Robert Roach. All in.
There was not a second on this.
What's that?
Was there a second?
There was no second.
Okay, so okay. So Mike Bickle was our next candidate, correct?
Correct.
Okay, the roll call vote on Michael Bickle.
Commissioner Rudascu?
Yes.
Commissioner Church?
I'm going to abstain again. So much.
Commissioner Leffel?
Yes.
Commissioner Oglesby?
No.
Vice Chair Craig?
Yes.
The ayes have it.
Mr.
Oh, gosh, Mr. Kong. Commissioner Kong, I'm so sorry. Commissioner Kong?
Well, the ayes already have it, but I did second it, so I have to say yes.
I'm so sorry.
And so, Safarina, as part of the motion, can you, or part of the action, can you clarify if there is a vote, positive vote from county member,
Correct.
city member,
Yes.
special district member,
Yes.
and a fourth vote?
And a fourth vote from public member.
The public member cannot
Sorry.
participate. It would need to be as another city, county, or district member.
I have.
I will change my vote to a yes.
Okay, then you have 2 county votes. And you have a special district vote, yes, as well as city.
I'll change my vote to yes. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've got it. That's great. Great consensus. Welcome to the board, Commissioner Bickle. We'll see you at our next meeting, and we'd appreciate you to be here in person as much as you can. And Gary, thank you for your time coming down today. I really appreciate it. Do we need to add any other action to that, or?
No, I just want to make one final comment. Thank you for all the people that applied for this. I know it was a difficult position for me to choose someone, but we did someone. But so I do appreciate all the people that put their names forward for that. And please continue if you want to. There's other positions open around the county and city and other special districts. Please, consider those positions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to consider LAFCO mid-year work program review and proposed amendment.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This staff report provides a draft resolution that would amend the commission's annual work program. The amendment would be to add in a new study of 3 of our Soledad area special districts to address some of their needs. We propose to begin that study this winter, and that would reschedule a planned routine study of our Monterey Peninsula cities, but that study would still begin next spring. So that is our report and our recommendation. We're requesting your approval today.
Do we have any questions on the commission before we open up for public comment? We'll move it to the public. Anybody from the public wanting to comment on this? Anybody from? Yes, go ahead. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ida Chan. I'm the CEO of the Soledad Community Healthcare District. I really want to thank this commission and Executive Officer McKenna for listening last time that we were here in regards to becoming a going concern for our healthcare district. As it was mentioned here, we are a valuable resource in South County. And as you guys have heard today, there is going to be lots of expansion happening, especially in the city of Soledad. So healthcare is becoming a very crucial part in our community. And these MSR reports are important so that we can see where our future plan and path is heading. And we are welcome to be a part of that process. And I thank Kate for making that a point in this study, that we're going to be a part of the process and not a going concern, but really a solution for our future's needs of our community, and especially in the city of Soledad and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Megan Hunter, City Manager, City of Soledad. I wanted to again thank Executive Officer McKenna and Jonathan Brinkman, who came to actually speak before the City of Soledad about the cemetery district. The cemetery district, we get probably our number one issue where we get a lot of complaints about, and there's not too much that we can do. And this may help, I think, really evaluate the weaknesses and maybe have an opportunity to strengthen that district. Also, the recreation district and the health district, I think, expressed the need for the help. And we will fully support this effort in any way that we can, including making City Hall available for meetings. And so thank you for initiating that work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time? Anybody on Zoom?
Chair, there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, we have before us to consider, so we would move it back to the dais, consider and adopt a resolution approving an amendment to previously adopted fiscal year 23-24 work program. Do we have a motion on the dais?
So moved.
It's been moved. And seconded by Church. Safarina, are you good?
I am. Thank you.
All those in favor? Oh, do we have a comment?
Yes, thank you. No, I just want to say thank you to Executive Director for really putting this as a priority. Not that the other ones, obviously we have a lot of work to do, but I think this is really important. And as was mentioned already, healthcare, as we all heard, is really critical to a lot of our communities. And as South County is growing, being able to have those additional services is really imperative. So, looking at how do we make sure that we look at policies, existing policies, how do we support our special districts as well as also our cemetery district that is really struggling. And obviously that's very personal for many of our residents, and wanting to make sure that as we move forward, some of those issues and challenges are addressed, and that there is a policy to be able to move forward in a positive manner to really address a lot of the concerns from our residents. Also, I think the Soledad Mission Recreation has been a staple in our community since I can remember. I grew up in Soledad, going to the swimming pool and making sure that a lot of those recreation opportunities continue to be available for the future of our growing communities is really important. So being able to pause, look at how we support, what kind of policies need to be put in place, and also some of the existing tax base or what we utilize to be able to fund those entities. It's outdated. What can we do also to support that financially and operationally? So I just want to say thank you to the commission.
Thank you. Anything else from the commission before we bring this back for a vote? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none. Passes.
Motion carries.
Trying to not have to have a roll call vote there, like the old days. Executive officers communications.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the commission, in agenda item number 11 of your packet, I report on 4 items, including the passing of one of our former commissioners and county supervisors, Tom Perkins. And I have no additional comments, but I'll be glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Anything from the commission? Seeing none, I'll move adjournment on this meeting.
Chair Gorley.
Yes, do we have questions?
Did you want to go through commissioner comments? Any additional commissioner comments?
Did I miss that?
You did, sir.
Apparently. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to the meeting here? We're done. Thank you. Meeting